have it. So I'm going to give a very brief introduction and hand over to Steve for the main presentation. So what you're here for is the opening of the Peter Hardie exhibition that we've been working on as the Computer Arts Society. I never knew Peter personally, and so I've come to know him through his work. And what amazes me is I only found out one thing, or a new thing today, which was that all of the work you see here is computer generated. I actually thought some of it was video recording. Well, that's interesting. He started off video recording and then created these images that have a very sort of a lifelike quality. So that was a bit of a revelation for me, not knowing Peter's work well. And that was how I interpreted him. So the exhibition is here as part of the BCS Moorgate office environment. It's running until, I think, roughly the end of September. So there are opportunities to come and visit it. Again, as individuals here or people online may want to come and see it. And access is via the Computer Arts Society website, computer-arts-society.com. And if you want to come and look at the exhibition, you can be able to book your slot and come and visit the offices and look at the exhibition then. However, everything is also online. We are putting this talk online. We have the video show reel, which is in the common area, that's online, and additional information, well, including a copy of the catalogue, which is a fantastic piece of work. Yeah, there's plenty of people here have it. There is the catalogue designer. Billy, where's me? All right. I think it's a great piece of work. So thank you very much for producing it. Everyone who's here can obviously take away a catalogue for free. For those who are with us online, the catalogue is on the Computer Arts Society website. You can download the PDF. If you do come here or to another CAS event over the coming sort of months, we have quite a few of them. So you should be able to pick one up if you want to come and pick up a physical catalogue. I think that's probably it from me. I'm going to hand over to Steve to talk about Peter and his work. And I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Right, okay. Well, it's nice seeing a few familiar faces and wonderful to see some unfamiliar faces who are here. So I'll just make sure I've got all this going. That's great. Right, I'll get familiar. So, hello to everyone, and thanks very much for coming along here and people on Zoom. I'm doing this talk as an introduction to the exhibition here. It's an overview of my friend and colleague, Peter Hardie, and his work. I'll be screening the animations that he made in his art practice and talking a little about his approach to his art and some of the exhibitions it was shown in. Peter produced, as Sean's alluded to, Peter produced his work using a 3D animation system, Softimage, latterly Softimage XSI. And it was developed for the animation industry, and people know it being used in the production of blockbuster movies. I could name them, but there are plenty. You can look it up online and find out. But that's the sort of normal assumption that what it would be used. So it's a kind of commercially viable. And Peter had worked on commercial animation projects in the past, including several entertainment rides produced by the consultancy of Bournemouth that he established and ran. But today we're looking at his fine art practice. So his artworks were not produced using a 2D paint system, although some of it used his painting skills to produce textures and so on. Peter modeled and animated virtual scenes using the graphic user interface and scripting. The scenes were then rendered and recording using the system's virtual camera, and often composited in layers to get the final effect. He applied a system that could be used to produce photorealistic imagery, but instead developed his own style. Informed by the work of Monet, Bridget Riley, Bonnard, and others, but painters, his work has a painterly feel, but it's not simply a homage, a reproduction, or an imitation, but uniquely Hardie. The exhibition shows work that Peter Hardie made during the period 2004 to 2019. On his website, shown here, Peter's work is arranged chronologically in the order of the themes and subjects he investigated. In this presentation, I'll play the animations following those themes and talk a little about them and where the work was exhibited. But most of all, I want the work to speak for itself. I don't really want to talk a lot. I want you to experience it. So I'll be showing you the videos. A lot of these were shown in exhibition contexts. So if you want to chat a little bit whilst you're watching, do that. Don't be too reverential. So Peter wrote that his work was driven by observation and reaction to specific moments in time and landscape, and that there was no narrative in stills or attributes. You'll see in the pamphlet that I wrote that he took the quotidian, he took stuff you might not normally notice, and then not my mind, that it's rather like, I think it was what Coleridge said about the difference between him and Wordsworth, about how Wordsworth took the ordinary and made it special, and by that it does. And there was something odd. It was interesting at Bournemouth. There were several artists, including people like Susan, who were dealing with slowing things down. Okay, so in his lyrical interpretations, we're led to attend to movement caused by forces of nature, like the flow of water or wind or gravity, and seemingly random and secondary movements, as he put it. These are things we can look out for when watching the animation. In this
meeting is being recorded.
Oh, good. These are things we can look out for when watching the animations. Okay. In his first compilation that we're going to see here, shown in one-man show at Bridport Arts Centre in Dorset and at SIGGRAPH in Los Angeles in 2004, we see Peter exploring the visual effects of light on water, including reflections in the River Avon in France, River Coquet in Northumberland, and sparkles on the sea observed off the Dorset coast, where he lived in Wareham. He spoke of making these, and this is on the SIGGRAPH site, what he wrote when he submitted there. Primary tool used was Softimage XSI. It was used to construct the scenes, color and texture the scenes, using procedural displacement, transparency, and color textures to create material properties such as the reflectance of the water surface, to light the scenes, including generation of caustic light off water surfaces, to composite separate layers of images together, to render the final images for the animation sequences. And Adobe Photoshop was used to paint houses, trees, boats, and sky images with reflections. The work was produced on a Dell PC. The sparkles in the Sparkle C sequence used the glimmer shader developed by Andy Hayes at Bournemouth University. Andy Hayes been very successful as a technical worker in the industry and was one of our colleagues, originally a student and a colleague. And I was talking to him or communicating with the other day, and he was telling me about how he did found a paper that did glitter on the surface and how he did that to Peter. So Peter collaborated with people. So let's see if we can get this video to work. what I say, this work was exhibited on screens in exhibitions. And I think with work like this, you need to attend to it as you would do to a painting. The same kind of. But I've watched it over and over, and it rewards repeated viewing.
I'll ask a quick question. So a lot of the pieces have a location named,
Yeah.
and what's the process of taking the location and creating the image? Is it like a photograph, or is it inspired by location?
What Joyce's wife said to me the other day was when they were going out, walking around the countryside, visiting places on holiday, he must have been all the time. One of the reasons I put that photograph on, that was Seacombe, the Sparkle CP's probably taken. Then after he died, I was given an opportunity to look through his hard drive, and that's what I've been looking at to see the work that he's been done, which was very emotional, I have to say. And he did studies. He did lots of photographs of stuff to study what he was going to then produce work from, which may be why you thought it might have been video. But he took the technology, and if you look at it carefully, you'll see that's not, it's an abstraction. It's taking the essence of it that he noticed that he thought was interesting and finding a way of, you have to, these animation systems, people might disagree with me, but when I've tried, you have to wrestle with them to get them to do. It's not easy. It takes hard work and patience, and eventually to get things to do what you want. So the actual task of how you do that, and again, taking into account another thing I came across was some photographs and just looking at the brush stroke. So one of the things that he was doing, I think, was taking this way that you can control how 3D animation is rendered. The virtual camera creates a picture and manipulating that to ensure that it had qualities of similar to painting. So that answer your question?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I titled the exhibition the way I did. Was actually it was very pointed out in something that Peter had written, that this movement from the realism to abstraction is a kind of, how do you take that and work with it? Okay, so 2007, Peter showed work he'd produced based on studies of waterfalls, including Pecker Falls near Ingleton in North Yorkshire, in a one-man show at New Greener Marks in Newbury, Berkshire. And the following video includes work from that show. It was also shown at, stills were shown at SIGGRAPH. I think we've got some of the ones here that were shown. So, this first one is called Up, Down, Fall. And here we see Peter exploiting the particle system approach to animation. And I don't want to make this a technical talk because I want you to look at the results rather than the process this time. But if you're coming across terminology in this talk that you haven't come across before, it's something you can Google and look up to find out about. And that's perhaps another story. Oh, we've got some people waiting to be admitted. I didn't realize I was controlling that. Am I meant to be controlling?
You should pick it up in the other.
We'll admit them now.
Here's what I found.
Okay, so it's using the particle system to animation, which is where you animate lots and lots of little illuminated particles. But he keeps the rocks that the water's bouncing off invisible or just about invisible. So we're looking at the shapes, the abstract shapes generated by the movement of the simulated water. Also shown in 2007 in a group show called Multi-Channel at the Gallery of Artsway in the New Forest, and another exhibition called Water at Stroud House Gallery in Stroud, Gloucestershire. And this piece, Fall in Water. One of the things that I found interesting is I didn't know about Ingleton Falls and Pecker Falls. So I looked it up online, and if you actually look at the photographs of that place and compare it to what Peter's done, you'll see how he's extracting some of the qualities, and it really does capture something about that.
Did you suggest any music to watch it with?
Sorry, I'm.
Did you suggest any music to watch it with?
No, I think rather like me, I think Peter, I'm not sure whether we talked about it myself when I do animation as well. I wanted to look at the visual and look at it in the same way that you would a painting or a drawing where you don't have sound. I'm not sure whether that was his motive, but that's certainly the case, is that music can make an enormous difference, as you probably realize, to our perception of anything. And one could argue that in this kind of context, it could be a distraction in the visual. Yeah.
Looking at these are fabulous. They remind me of the videos that you can get on the website to go to sleep by, but they have sound.
Yeah.
It has the same effect watching it.
Right, it could be my lecture. Yeah, for anyone who didn't hear the question.
The same.
Similarity to videos you might find to help you go to sleep or relax, perhaps. And I think one of the things that Peter said about it is that it should be quiet and contemplative, which I think implies he succeeded in doing that. I think it's the the idea of actually looking at things you wouldn't normally do for a long time is part of techniques of mindfulness and contemplation and so on. So it has a feeling to me, I think it has a Zen quality about it. And one of the things I would say is, having watched Peter's work, when I see these phenomena in real life, I notice them more. It changed the way I saw things. And I think if an artist is doing anything, they're changing the way we look at things that we normally might not notice. So, 2008, artists from 2 research groups at Bournemouth University exhibiting as a salon, consisting of the two groups were the visual research group, which was initially run by Peter, and another research group called Emerge, which is still running. And they exhibited in the study gallery in Poole in Dorset. And Peter showed prints and animation from his Leaves on the River project. Now there's a version of it outside on the 4 screens, which has been put together by Sean. So it's taking one of Peter's pieces, and then we thought as we got the 4 screens, we should have a go and see whether we could take that. I think it works rather nicely. But Leaves on the River, along with Falling Water and Light on, looked already, was shown on the village screen at Glastonbury Festival in 2009. This animation is 5 minutes long and it can be seen elsewhere, so I'm just going to show a little bit of it. And it is also available on his website, so you can actually see it there. Again, the reflected trees are painted using paint system and then put in the 3D animation system to generate the reflections. And one of the things Andy Hayes told me when I was communicating with the other day was that when he was working with Peter, he noticed that Peter only painted as much as was necessary to cause the correct reflection. He didn't do a detailed painting of the trees or whatever it was that was being, or houses, whatever being reflected, just sufficient to get the effect that he wanted to get. And I think, again, one of the things you might think about if you're looking at how something like Softimage or other animation systems are used in movies is that you get, they're meant to be photorealistic. They're meant to convince you they're actually there with the actors in them as well. Peter's following a stylistic approach and following the kind of people that he was influenced, like Monet and so on. What would Monet have done if he could have had the images? I wonder. I know quite a few of my students had a go when I was at Bournemouth and taught them doing that kind of stuff. I know there's a recent the exhibition installation at the moment. I think it's still on in London. That's somewhat controversial. I think myself that you won't see the real Monets, not because of it. This is real, mind you, rather than a homage. It's new work. And one of the things that was interesting was when I asked Sean, I did a version of the 4 screen thing where I basically took a hero leaf and timed it so that it would go, I offset each one so that one of the leaves would go from screen to screen to screen. And it was like it was like playing poo sticks, you know, when you throw a stick under off a bridge and then go the other side of the bridge and see whose stick comes through first in racing, and just watching it go down was very much like that. So it has a similar feel to this gentle, sort of entertaining way of understanding what's happening. And I think the fact that I could see it that way and shows just how much he manages to capture the quality of. Oh, and that was right. When Sean was putting it together, he said, "But the leaves all move at different speeds." Of course they do, don't they? In 2009, the same research groups had a second exhibition, same place, Salon 2, the gallery which had now renamed itself Cube. And Peter showed his new work on the theme of willows on the river, including prints and the associated animation. And in this animation, we can see Peter working on different movements of models of willow branches. I can't stress enough, he's making three-dimensional virtual models of branches and then animating them. And also the way the leaves touching the water surface create ripples. As in the falling water pieces, any background we might expect to see is absent. For example, we see only the reflection of the leaves in the ripples rather than the water surface, giving the work similar characteristics to what we might expect in painting, but remaining true to the peculiar qualities of computer graphic rendering. Oh, and here we see some tests, giving us sort of insight into how he worked. We see several test animations and then the final piece. So we're getting insight into how he worked. And again, when I was looking at the photographs he'd taken of Monet, there is a Monet, down there, a Monet, which is very much like this willow. After watching this kind of thing, one of the things I found, and one of the things Peter and I talked about, was how if you look at trees, and I look out at the bushes in my garden in the wind, and every part moves at a slightly different rate, not only because of the way the wind passes through it, but also the structure of it and the. When you see here, it's beginning, it's getting quite painterly. The effect of the water on the reflection creates some quite painterly gestures. And if you actually look at Monet paintings, you get this, but people those, because of the nature of the technology and how it works, and how the renderer will calculate, and you get these new shapes. So we're not looking at something trying to make a photorealistic scene. It's an abstraction of an element of something we're looking at. And during lockdown, when we did have an opportunity to go out and visit, meet friends, I went out and met some friends at a distance in the New Forest, and we went for a walk. And there was a pond, and I can tell you where it was. And there was a willow leaning over the pond with the leaves moving like that in the water, and I immediately thought of Peter's work. Would I have noticed it otherwise? I don't know. I'm not sure I would. I certainly wouldn't have looked at it in the same way. The last exhibition that Peter showed work in that I have a record of was Broken Stillness, curated by Helen Sloan, who also curated the multi-channel show at Artsway that I mentioned earlier. And I think we should acknowledge that she supported artists at Bournemouth Media School with advice and promotion for a few years at that time. In this show, Peter exhibited work from his penultimate theme, Willow. In these sequences, Peter adds some indication of the water, which he didn't in the previous sequences. And in the later sequences, he uses a monochrome color scheme, which I think seems to allude to the brush and ink drawings and brings me back to the idea and a statement he made about his work being contemplative and reflective. It makes me think of the sort of paintings one might see done in the Far East, Chinese and Japanese. Yeah, this is just like it looked in the New Forest. And it has just occurred to me, it is like brushstrokes. Branches like a brush making. Before moving on to look at what Peter was working on at the end of his life, there's a very short animation called Four Ripples. This, I think, is the most abstract of the pieces we've got, and may well indicate the direction that Peter's creative visual journey might have taken. You do not know where that journey would have taken him, where it would have taken him next. We only have what he spent his last years working on whenever he had a chance. Peter lived next to Wareham Forest, and in that forest, he found a tree, which became the subject of his final theme, birch. When arranging a posthumous exhibition of Peter's work in Belfast, his friend John Price and I discovered whether to show examples of the unfinished work in progress, and decided that if we did, it would give an insight into what he might have achieved had he lived to complete it. Of course, it can only be that, an insight or a hint. But I'm going to finish by showing a few images from the hard drive he backed up his work onto. Give us a feel of his working process too. So these are images from 2013, presumably used when modeling branches. So when you're using a 3D animation system, one of the things you can do is you can bring up a picture behind where you're building the models so you can match things to the picture. Of course, these are in 3D. Peter was very cagey about what he was doing. When he retired, he had his garage converted into a studio. And those of us in the Peter research group, he kept coming into the university to join in on meetings and so on, and was for a while artist in residence there. And we say, Peter, come on, show us what you're doing. You know, come and have a look. No, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. Sadly, we only got this to show what he was working on. But there was his tree, and he went and studied it. Loads of photographs and videos of different seasons, different angles, so you can get an idea of the three-dimensional shape of where the branches are. And this just gives an insight into the kind of care he was going into modeling these things. I wanted to show you that he used coding as well. When he started, he was using, he worked with Peter, as I say in the booklet, he worked with Peter Komdinos on developing the Seagull. Peter was developing Seagull animation system, and Peter worked together as a sort of artistic input into that. And at that time, you can only use scripting. You had to write like a program to actually get your animations and models built. Some people here went through that delightful process. But Peter Komdinos's animation system, it would be a separate lecture, but it's worth pointing out that Peter Komdinos's animation system, Seagull, was at a time when other people were using scripting language and typed instructions to get the system to do what you wanted. And what Peter Komdinos did was used the language of filmmaking in the instructions that were available. So it reflected the way, what you might expect to have to do when you were using the animation system. And Peter Hardie was working on that with him, giving him advice on feeding into that, doing examples. And then it was used when the National Centre for Computer Animation was about to be set up in Bournemouth. That's another story, as I say. But this is an example of a script in Python. In fact, I can remember one year Peter sat in on my Python scripting lessons with a student so he could learn how to do it. And then he went away and used this. This is actually a script for placing leaves on branches. So I used a combination of different approaches. And this is so taken from a folder of image which was named Possible. And I think we can see here components that Peter was looking to composite together to make a final animation. I was going to show you, he did render out, he did actually create the frames of animations, but they weren't actually generated as animations. So theoretically, I don't know, so to use Softimage, we could get it running, we could actually generate what he was working on. So this is an image that was chosen to represent this last phase of Peter's work. And there's a print of it at the back of the room. I just want to say, Sue Gollifer, whose work will constitute the next exhibition here, Writing in Digital Creativity Journal in 2011 of the Broken Stillness exhibition that Peter had working, described it as a celebration of the artist's signature work and style in an age embracing collective authoring, sharing, and the hive mind. The exhibition, she wrote, did not suggest an alternative for shared working, but was a call to maintain space for individual practice to make a contribution. She wrote, the artist used the unique value of technology to increase the spectrum of mark-making, landscape, media, and gesture. I hope that this exhibition will demonstrate how Peter Hardie's individual practice. Thank you. Incidentally, there is a Computer Art Society linked to the origin of the National Centre for Computer Animation. And that's George Mallon. Anyone knows George Mallon? Oh, George Mallon, there's a book coming out soon about his work. It was George who conceived of and set up the media production department at Bournemouth, the then Dorset Institute of Higher Education. And that media production courses there included computer animation stream. And it led to the employment of Peter Hardie and Peter Comenius, which later led to the establishment of the NCCA. That's another story. And if you want to find out more about that, there's an NCCA archive online you can find.
I think that was a great and very insightful talk. Thank you very much indeed. I guess we have a bit of time for questions if anybody has any.
If there are any, if not, you might want to talk. There are a few people here who knew Peter. If you want to find out more about that.
I say, Steve, that was a great talk. It was really good.
Thank
It was
you.
lovely to see his work in progress and to see what, especially presented by you. Yeah.
Yeah, there is something in common with Peter actually was thinking of having an exhibition of the two of us together. And when I retired, I was looking forward to arranging that and working it out with him, but it coincided with him becoming ill, so it didn't ever happen. So this is my sort of thanks for the idea that that might happen. But it's again, it's looking at nature and seeing, trying to draw something from it that's different. And I was fascinated looking through Peter's work at how it had moved through that abstraction. You know, like Sean said, it looked, you know, more like video to start off with, and then it ends up with this. And looking at what was happening with the tree, it really is fascinating. It's no wonder it took him so long, because it's a very complicated thing to do.
Steve, I thought it was fascinating because I'd seen these works in our show and tells, you know, when we used to show the work. And so we saw those and we saw them in exhibitions, but you're putting all of this work together and showing that journey and change from his thought process and his maybe his techniques and seeing the work progress. I've not seen that, you know, I've not seen that before. So that was really beautiful to see that.
Yeah, he wasn't a man to talk about his work
No.
much. I have to say, when it was suggested that I do a talk, I thought, what can I say?
Like,
Difficult,
it's
so-
really good how you strung it all together. You know, it's really nice to see, you know, and the development phases and things like that. I've never seen it explained like that before, certainly not even by Peter. I think he probably explained it better than he probably would have.
Well, it's sometimes when you're so involved in what you're doing, it's sometimes hard to see.
Yeah, when you're the first person, isn't it? Yeah.
So thank you very much. I hope you appreciated it. But that's why I wanted you to look at it rather than listen to me talk, because it does speak for itself, really.
I think you've helped by giving it that expanded
Well,
context.
this is what I thought I would
Yeah.
do, is show you what I see and encourage you to look at it again and see what you can see that I didn't. And then again, when you look at the sort of things that you're looking at, collection of water on boats, which we see, I used to go on narrow boats down the canal, and it's always wonderful going under the bridges because you get that caustic light reflection effect. But I thought it reminded me when I worked with an architect called Florian Beigel many years ago. He was very into the painter Morandi. I recommend you have a look at some of his, and Morandi painted just ordinary objects like bottles on a shelf, very simple, but it transformed them into something else. And it's again another photographer, Ake. Again, some of his photographs have a similar kind of, they're just photographs of gardens, but they're very simple